Hey guys, unfortunately Scott got kidnapped recently and I have been forcibly hired as his doppelganger, which is really bizarre because recently the Queen herself knighted him as the fantastic Mr. S. So the timing seems just a little fortuitous, but whatever. I'm supposed to put on this facade that's supposed to indicate
Kidnapped? What? Who said I was kidnapped? I was just going to the bathroom. Need to do that.
Oh yes, your bowels or your bladder are taking you to the washroom against your will. That's kidnapping.
Ah, so it is, eh?
Yes.
What are you doing on here anyway?
Well, I thought I'd come review something with you.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Want to review something with me?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic Mr. S.
Fantastic Mr. S.
So what do you want to review anyway?
I don't know. I was thinking maybe review Who's Next?
Who's next?
Yes.
Is that by The Who?
Yes, it is.
Alright then, that's settled then. Let's review Who's Next!
All right.
As many of you may know, Who's Next, that's The Who's, one of their most famous albums, actually. And it's been considered one of the greatest albums of all time.
It's one of my all-time favorite albums, too. It's really one of those scenarios where you just so intuitively understand why everybody else always places it on such a high pedestal the moment you hear it.
I wouldn't go that far in my case.
I
mean, when I first heard it, I was expecting more of a flow, kind of like how you hear in Paranoid, Appetite for Destruction, and The Wall, especially The Wall. What I got instead was more of a straightforward kind of album for The Who. I mean, it wasn't anything like Tommy or Quattrophenia. Yeah. But it did have a lot of standout tracks in there, like Baba O'Reilly, and Won't Get Fooled Again, obviously.
Yes, or Bargain, or Going...
Yeah, Bargain! That was one of the tracks I hadn't heard before on there, and I got hooked on it.
The best I ever had.
Same deal with Getting in Tune. Oh, and you also had Behind Blue Eyes on there. That was a...
Yes, and an absolute standout for The Who at any point during their career.
Indeed. And speaking of standouts, Keith Moon's drumming is definitely the shining point of this album. I mean, the drum fills on there, those are just amazing. That's the kind of thing that I built my drumming on. I got really inspired by that.
Well, yes, I mean, his drumming on that particular album,
especially on Won't Get Fooled Again.
Well, yes, Won't Get Fooled Again would be the obvious standout, but even on Baba O'Reilly, during that last section with the violin, the way he starts to slowly build up those fills at the end, that was quite...
It's kind of like a Yiddish dance at the end.
Yes, it is, well, I don't know that I'd say Yiddish dance, I'd say more like it sounds like something you'd hear at a Scottish ceremony.
Huh.
So the first time I heard this album, the thing that really struck me about it was almost, there were two things. One was just how modern and yet how classic it sounded simultaneously. The other was...
Hey, kind of like those synthesizers on Baba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again.
I mean, it's remarkable how modern the synthesizer use and the synthesizer compositions on those songs sound. It does not sound like something that came out 45 years ago.
Exactly. Well, somewhat. It still has those rock and drum sounds and all that.
Well, yes,
from
but...
the 70s.
Well, yes, but I'm talking about just the synthesizers, not anything else.
Yeah, exactly. I also liked how they weren't used in every single song.
Yes, I was particularly appreciative of that. I've never believed in... Something I've noticed is that when people talk a lot about flow, what they're really talking about is they just want monotony. But if you were to just include a synthesizer on every song on this album, just for the sake of a synthesizer inclusion, it would really wear out its welcome quite quickly.
Believe me, it wore out its welcome 15 years ago. Okay,
Yes.
10 years ago, actually. If not that.
Well, I think it wore out its welcome during the mid-80s, but that was before I was born, so I am in the privileged position of not having to actually listen to a lot of, at least the synthesizer overuse from that particular era.
Same here. I mean, yeah, it did have a lot of standout tracks on there, but there were a couple songs that were kind of forgettable. One of them being that song that John Entwistle sang on. That one was pretty forgettable. What was it called, Coke?
My wife.
My
Yes, my wife. I mean, when you say it the way I just said it,
My wife.
My wife. Yes, I have such a happy marriage. Which
What the hell kind of title is that?
Well, I mean, when I said it just now, I made it sound like I had an actual wife and I was referring to her as just being this forgettable tune that I want to run away from, which ironically, you could argue that the subject of the song is about that too. I mean, John Entwistle has inadvertently tricked his wife into believing that he is having an affair with another woman when in reality he just got too drunk and got arrested and now he's trying to run away from her. There is a bit of a parallel there.
I see.
I have to wonder if that had anything to do with why you were so unenthusiastic about the song.
Well, again, I was expecting more of a flow, kind of like those albums I just mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that's fair, but the thing about the albums you just mentioned in terms of flow, albums like the Tommy or Quadrophenia or The Wall, those albums were all deliberately composed where every single song is written as a smaller part of a larger overarching story. But Who's Next, that's not really what it's trying to do. That's not really the direction it's trying to go in, and I don't really think it's fair to compare those albums on those terms and use that as a basis for what flow is on Who's Next.
I see.
For me, the thing about Who's Next is because there is so much diversity to all the songs, that alone helps give it a flow, because you're never expecting one thing and then given something else. Because you're always expecting something different, and it always gives you something different.
And I agree.
For me,
that to me is what makes a great album.
Yeah, so for me...
And Who's Next has a little bit of that.
So for me, the flow is established just by it being so diverse in every single one of its songs. I mean, it's an album where no track stands out because every track stands out.
That's... Okay, that is just paradoxal.
How is that paradoxical?
No song standing out, and yet every track standing
Well, think of
out?
I mean, that's applicable to anything. If everything stands out, nothing stands out anymore.
Sound-wise, Who's Next isn't anything groundbreaking, yeah, except for the synthesizers, but I can definitely see why many people consider it to be the greatest Who album of all time. Especially you, Coke.
Yes.
It's just got something that the other albums didn't really have, and that was a set of tracks that really stood out. And a lot of that was thanks to Keith Moon's drumming. I mean, I was expecting a bit more of a flow to the whole thing, but as it is, it's still a well-executed album.
I think Who's Next represents a perfect marriage of a plethora of numerous different sounds. Contrary to Scott's opinions, I think the album has a very good flow, and I think it manages to collocate it really well with the diversity on the album, which is probably one of the most difficult accomplishments possible in music. Overall, this album has been one of the greatest musical discoveries of my life, and I could not be more thankful that it exists.
Yeah, so am I, and I'm really glad that I listened to Who's Next. You know what? I'm gonna give it a win. Win!
Seeing as this is one of my all-time favorite albums, I will give it an epic win.
Epic win! Anyways, it was great having you on here, Coke.
Thank you, it was lovely to be on here.
That's good. I'm the fantastic Mr. S.
And I am... I will just call myself his accomplice for now.
Okay, whatever. But anyways, you're watching
Dangerously Rockin' Reviews!
Oh man, that was amazing.
Yeah, okay.
You really nailed that one.